If you've ever had to test a website, you know the grind. All that endless clicking, filling out the same forms over and over. But what if you could just automate all of it? Well, today, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're diving into Selenium, a tool that can do just that. We're going to cover what it is, why it's so incredibly powerful, and how you can get your first automated test running today.
Right? If you've spent any time in quality assurance, you know this feeling deep in your soul. Click the button, fill out the form, check the box. Again and again and again. It's not just tedious, it is a massive drain on your time, your energy, and your team's resources.
So let's actually try and put some numbers to that feeling. I mean, how much time are we really talking about here? Let's quantify what that manual grind really looks like for a pretty typical team. Okay, just look at how this explodes. A single QA engineer, as you can see, might get through about 20 test cases in a day. That's 100 a week. But scale that up to a small, pretty standard team of 4, and suddenly that number skyrockets to 400 test cases every single week. That much manual work isn't just a grind. It's a huge bottleneck for any project. When you're staring down a workload like that, it becomes pretty obvious that the solution isn't just to work harder. You have to work smarter. You need to replace that complicated, soul-crushing manual process with a simple, elegant idea. And that's where our hero enters the story. So, let's meet the tool that can take on all of that repetitive work, freeing up your team to focus on the stuff that actually requires a human brain. So, what even is Selenium? Well, it's not magic, but it kind of feels like it. At its core, it's a powerful toolkit specifically built to automate the exact things you would do in a web browser. The easiest way to think of it, it's like a programmable robot that can test your web apps for you 24/7. So what can this robot actually do? Well, it can handle all the core actions you'd expect. You can command it to get a web page, which just means open a URL. You can tell it to send keys to type something into a form field. You can tell it to click on a button or a link. And finally, you can tell it to close the browser when the test is all done. These simple commands are the building blocks for just about any web test you could possibly imagine. Now, that all sounds great in theory, but how does it actually work? What's going on under the hood? It really all comes down to 2 fundamental concepts that we need to get our heads around. First up is something called the WebDriver. The absolute best analogy for this is to think of it as the instruction manual for our robot. It's the complete set of commands, like click and get, that we can use to tell the browser exactly what to do. It's basically our remote control for the browser. Okay, so if the WebDriver is our list of commands, the web element is the target for those commands. It's any piece of the web page that you can actually interact with. I mean, you can't just tell your robot to click, you have to tell it what to click. That what is the web element. For example, a text box you type in, that's a web element. A radio button you select, also a web element. Same goes for any link, image, drop-down menu, or checkbox. Basically, if you, as a human, can click it, type in it, or select it on a web page, Selenium sees it as a web element that you can take control of with your script. All right, so now we have our robot. That's the WebDriver, and we know what to tell it to interact with. Those are the web elements. Let's get to the real payoff. What happens when we put this all together? This right here is where it all clicks. Remember those 400 test cases? The ones that took a team of 4 people an entire week to get through. With a single, well-written Selenium script, you can run that entire suite of tests in about 4 hours. That's not just an improvement. That is a total game changer for your workflow. An entire week's worth of work done in a single afternoon. Now, let's be realistic for a second. This isn't some magic button you just press and everything's fixed. There is an initial investment of time and effort to write and set up these automation scripts. But as we just saw, the long-term return on that investment isn't just good, it's absolutely transformative. So you've seen the potential, you get it. Now let's turn that potential into something real. How can you actually get started and write your very first automated task? Before you write a single line of automation code, you just need 2 tools. First, the Java Development Kit, or JDK. That's what lets your computer understand and run Java. Second, you'll want an IDE, like Eclipse. Think of it as just a smart text editor that makes writing and organizing your code a whole lot easier. The setup itself is a really simple 3-step process. First, you go and download the Selenium files that work with Java. Second, you unzip those files. And third, you add what are called the jar files into your project in Eclipse.
And that's it. This gives your project access to all those powerful Selenium commands we were just talking about.
And here's what it looks like in action. This little piece of code is all it takes to get started. That first line, WebDriver driver equals new Chrome driver, basically just tells Selenium to open up a new, clean Chrome browser window. The second line, driver.get, uses that get command to navigate to whatever website you tell it to. And that third line just maximizes the browser window to fill the screen. Just like that, with only 3 lines of code, you've created your first piece of web automation. So now you have the building blocks, you've seen how much time you can save, and you know the exact steps to get started. The only question left is what's the first tedious, repetitive task you're going to hand over to your new robot assistant? And maybe more importantly, what will you do with all that time you get back?